Okay, can folks see the introduction screen, the slide? Good to go? Nice. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Cool. Thanks, getting the thumbs up from panelists. Excellent. Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So, hey, everybody, good morning. Happy Wednesday, hump day. I'm Jamie Kirby, and I'm the Urban and Community Forestry Coordinator for State of Montana, Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. And if you are on this webinar, you are the lucky recipient of an Inflation Reduction Act grant or a Program Development Grant Act, I almost said Act, grant. And so this is going to be the congrats. So you got a grant, now what? Webinar. It is being recorded. So this session should last about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on questions and answers. And please go ahead and post your questions in the chat whenever you get them. It'll be an open forum type of discussion. So we will take a look at those questions as we're presenting and go along as they're relevant and answer them. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off actually just for a couple slides, and then Janice is going to take over. So like I said, this will be kind of a how to really get everything together, organized, and set up. Hopefully this will answer your questions and you can access this webinar later on. We'll post it to our webpage like we did with the kickoff meeting. So that said, let me get my slides up. And here we go. The agenda today, if you can, in the chat box, go ahead and type in who you are and why you're here, where you're from, the entity that you represent, and which grant that you have, because that does make a little bit of difference in the type of management and tracking that you'll be needing to do. And it'll also introduce you to some of the other recipients around the state that did receive one of these grants for the year. So if you can do that while we're going through the presentation, great. The first part will be, the first section will be Janice Fontaine, and she'll be doing the behind the scenes nitty gritty, all the text and the fun stuff, administration, agreements, and the submittable platform. From there, I'll go into, the on the ground stuff, the implementation, managing your project and tracking it. And then Alexis is going to talk about the reporting requirements and what's needed for that and what that looks like. And then like I said, we'll have room for questions and answers. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Janice. If I can stop sharing. There we go. Janice, there you go.
Good morning. How are you guys? Okay, so I don't know how fun my part is, but it's important because I'm going to teach you how to read your agreement, where to find really important information, and get your money. So maybe not fun, but definitely necessary. So the first thing I want to show you, this is part 6 of your agreement, and this is how to find your actual copy of your agreement. The person who signed it on behalf of your organization, who is this person, the subrecipient representative, has a signed copy of your organization's agreement. So for a nonprofit, that's probably your executive director, could be your mayor, could be your county commissioner. But if you don't have a signed copy of your agreement, go to that person and get it from them, because you're going to need it. Oh, okay. So this is page 1 of your agreement. Main thing on this one, I mean, the fun part is how much you got. But you're going to need to know your subaward agreement number. It's going to be asked of you many times. So here's where you find it. It's this very first thing. Always going to start with UFC or UCF. I always do that. Sorry, Jamie. So Urban and Community Forestry. It'll always start with those 3 letters. Scrolling down a little bit, next thing you're really going to want to pay attention to is your project terms, which is section 2. Right here is your period of performance. This is going to tell you when your project begins and when it ends. So you see right here, start date is the date of last signature. That's why I showed you where to get your agreement, so you know what the date of the last signature is. So that's when your project starts. That's when you can start billing. So we operate on a reimbursement basis most of the time. I'll explain a little bit more of that later. But we cannot reimburse for expenses that occurred prior to the start date of your project, unless you have a specific part of your agreement that allows pre-award costs. Most don't. So don't bill us for things that happened prior to the date of the last signature on your agreement, because we can't reimburse you for those. Likewise, we can't reimburse you for things that happened or were purchased after the termination date. So please keep those 2 dates in mind. Next thing you really want to pay attention to is your project scope. And a big part of that is right here, this key outcome statement. This is what you've agreed to do with the funds that you've been awarded. So in this example, this person has agreed, or this organization has agreed to plant 200 trees and prune and trim 20 hazardous trees. That's what we expect to happen with the funds that were awarded to you. And this is what we're going to look at when you send in requests for reimbursement and program reports or progress reports to see how this is advancing. Now, we also understand things happen. So if something happens that is big enough that throws you off of that, out of these key outcomes, and you think, oh my God, my contractor now is doubling his cost, so I'm never going to be able to trim 20 hazardous trees. Okay, you have a legitimate reason. Call your technical specialist, your forester or Jamie, and tell them that. We can work with you. We can do an amendment to fix that so that you're not being held accountable for something you absolutely cannot do. Just remember, it does have to be a legitimate reason, and we have to do it in advance. This isn't something we can do after everything's done. So next down is your project budget. This is directly out of the budget that was submitted with your application, or that was reassessed if changes were made to the amount that, or you were not awarded the entire amount you requested. So we pull these categories directly from that budget. So in this example, $30,000 has been set up in the operating expenses, 20 in contracted services. Again, we expect, because you said in your application that this is what you anticipate, these are the categories that you anticipate needing funds from. And we will look at this with your progress reports and your requests for reimbursement. So please pay attention to this. But again, because we know things happen, you do have the ability to transfer up to 10% of the total sub-award amount between direct cost budgets as needed. So in this case, the total sub-award amount is $50,000, so 10% is $5,000. You can transfer $5,000 between these direct costs, these white sections, as needed, with prior. Right here, this is the subrecipient must notify the DNRC of such transfers. So if you're going to do that, please notify your technical person, Jamie, your forester, before you actually send your request for reimbursement, and so that we know it's going to happen. Because otherwise, we're going to have to call and ask, and it's going to take longer for you to get your funds. If you have to transfer more than 10%, that requires an amendment. So you would have to get a hold of Jamie, get pre-permission, and go through the entire signing process again. So it can be done, it just takes a little bit more effort and time. I'm gonna squish down here. So disbursements. You're gonna hear me say request for reimbursement. Reimbursement, disbursements are kind of used interchangeably. So it means essentially the same thing in this case. So when you're getting ready to send in a request for reimbursement, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in Submittable in a moment, the very basic thing you need to keep in mind is that you need to provide us with documentation that shows us that the cost was incurred and that the cost was paid. So we have this whole list right here, right inside of your agreement that tells you what that documentation may be. Alexis will also show you a slide in a little while that kind of lays that out in another way. So there's tons of ways you can show us. Just keep that really in mind, that the basic is we need to know how that it incurred and that it was paid. So, and right down here, you have your appendices at the end of your agreement. And so like here, we've got your project proposal as part of that. So that's your original application, any addendums. So if you had to redo budget, that's in there. And then appendices C, if you have it, those will tell you what we can reimburse. So, you know, we can only reimburse for things that are part of this project. So if you know, you said you're going to plant trees, but then, and you didn't ask for anything for irrigation, but then you send in documentation for irrigation, we can't reimburse for that. We can only reimburse for what is in your application and what is in your budget. Now, this part right here, this blue part, for the very first time, we are allowing requests for advances instead of just reimbursements, because these are much larger grants than we've done before, and they're multi-year in many cases. So that is an option. However, there is more documentation and there are more things you need to have in place before we can allow an advance. So if you're thinking about doing an advance, please read this section really carefully and get everything in place prior to asking. Because the thing I find that holds up most people is this darker sentence right here: the subrecipient must maintain written procedures that minimize the time elapsing between the transfer of funds and their disbursement. So if you're from a city and this is going to have to be done through your city council, that's going to take some time. So if you're like, again, if you're thinking about advance, read through this carefully. If you have any more questions, just get a hold of me. I can help explain it a little bit more. But these rules are not DNRC rules. These are federal rules. So they're not anything we can deviate from. Okay, so on down to reports. There are two kinds of reports. And again, we tend to use them interchangeably. There's the fiscal reports, also known as a request for reimbursement. And then there's the program or progress reports. So right here, we're talking about progress reports or your program report. So again, this year's new because they're multi-year. We're doing biannual progress reports instead of a midterm. So you've got two reporting periods: the first of the year through the end of June and July 1st through the end of December. Those are your reporting periods. Your reports are due by the end of the month, the following month after the reporting period. So to start off, you don't have to worry about the first part of this year about reporting on it, because I mean, I don't think very many of you actually got your agreements prior to June 1st. You did, yay. But you don't have to worry about a progress report for that period, because you know, there's likely you didn't get enough done. So your first progress or program report is going to be for the inception of your project through the end of December of 24. Then your report is due, this is right here, by the end of January. So you have the month of January to get your reports in. And next year, 1st of January through June 30th, you will have till the end of July to get that in. I think Alexis is going to go over that again, because this is not an easy thing to understand. We get it. There is a worksheet that kind of gives you an idea of what you need to collect while you're going through your project, so that you don't, like, at the end of it, have to, you know, go through 6 months worth of stuff. That worksheet is attached as Appendix F in your agreement. So it's not the report, it's just a worksheet. It's to guide you. You still have to report within submittable, but it is a guide to help you collect stuff on the way. And right here you see, this is why we can say it has to be in submittable, because your agreement signed this, that it has to be in submittable. Okay, I'm gonna keep on. Sorry if I'm making anybody seasick with scrolling down. I just wanted to point this out really quickly. Agency recognition requirements. If you are advertising that something is being done with this, if you're going to have an event, if you're putting up signage for, you know, your project, whatever you're doing, you need to essentially give credit where it's due. And one of the things that was in the RFP, the request for proposals, when these went out, is that this is funding derived from the Department of Agriculture, so the USDA, DNRC, and the Inflation Reduction Act and the Urban and Community. Sorry, I never get this to mind. The Urban and Community Forestry Programs. So it just needs to be given credit. So if you're putting up a sign explaining this beautiful project that you did, you need to include those organizations as the funders. So then again, so here's this first page we looked at, your principal contacts. That is right in your agreement. Here are the people that you need to contact for various things. Your technical specialist is going to be the main one that you're going to want to really get familiar with. And then here, of course, is Jamie's information. And this is Lori Palm. She is the supervisor of the grants group. This is her information if you ever need to get a hold of her. And then here's your signature page. That's the end of the agreement portion. Your individual appendices come after this. But here's where you'll find your inception date, because it will be the last date, the latest date of signatures. Okay. So now we're going to move on to submittable. And I'm going to go back so that you can see. Sorry, submittable is running a little slow today. I'm trying to take you back to the login page so I can really show you how to do this. Okay. So we are now in submittable. And my goal here is to show you where to find your what are labeled in submittable as request forms. That's going to be your request for reimbursement form and your progress report form. So I want you to be able to find them. So when you log into submittable, it's going to come here, my submission. If it doesn't come here, click on submissions, it will take you to here. So you want to find the grant that you need to report on. So as you can see, I have a lot of test grants in here, but this is the one that we want to look at. And this is the opportunity name. So if you've got like 4 grants with DNRC that's in submittable, you want to look for the UCF PD IRA grant if that's the one you're reporting on. So you click on the submission name, and it takes you to the submission page where you have all this cool stuff that you can look at. You have activity, all the messages that have ever been sent to and fro on this agreement, the works, and then you have forms. But before we get to forms, I want to show you a super cool thing just happened like last week. So right here, you see transfer ownership. Anyone who has had to move a submittable account to somebody else is going to be excited about this, because instead of having to go through submittable and have them do it for you, you can do it yourself. And it's going to save a ton of time, and it's awesome. So if you ever need, someone leaves, someone isn't going to be managing the program anymore, you need to transfer to somebody else, right here is where you do it. Also know that if somebody has left and they forgot to do this or didn't do it, Lori or I can do it as well. So if that happens, let us know. We would just need the name of the person it's transferring to and their email, and we can take care of it from there. The person who is taking on the ownership will get an email with instructions on how to take over the account. So nice. Okay, so back to how you find your forms. You're in submission. You have clicked on the opportunity. You want to go to forms. Here are all of the forms that are attached to this agreement or this submission, as they use. So like your eligibility form that you filled out before you even did your application. Here's your application if you ever wanted to look at it. And then just a few other additional forms we may or may not have had you fill out. And then right here, this is what you want to look for. Request forms is kind of at the bottom of the page. So you've got your biannual report form and your request for reimbursement. So you want to see your request for reimbursement. You want to fill it out, pop it up. If you are not the only one who's going to be working on this. You may be the program manager and you need your fiscal person to help you. This is how you do that. You manage collaborators. You click on this, you put in their email and invite them, and they will get an email giving them directions on how to join in. Go ahead. So that's how you add a collaborator. So you can have multiple people working on it. Agreement number, you see this little red required. Sometimes it's a red asterisk. Either way, if you see that, you're not gonna be able to submit this form without filling that out. We have some notes here on exactly what needs to be sent in to constitute documentation that costs were incurred and that they were paid. So here's where it's a little bit different. We have branching capabilities within submittable. So does your grant require match? If you have a PD grant, yes, it will. If you have an IRA grant, no, it won't. You will be shown different questions based on the answer to this. I'm going to leave it as yes right now because it shows more questions. So then you want to fill out your request for disbursement, pull it up, save it to your hard drive, fill it out, save it again. Can't emphasize saving it enough because it is a real bummer to go through all this and then lose all your information. Is fillable. So you just fill out your organization, agreement, request for reimbursement or advance, your total award amount, that in the example case was $50,000, funds previously requested. If this is not your first one and you've already requested $10,000, you want to put it in there so the math works, so you'll know how much you have left. Period covered by this is like if you're doing this monthly, this year, you can request funds quarterly, at the end, monthly, please probably not more than monthly, but monthly, quarterly, whatever. So you go ahead and put your start date and end date, and those should match your documentation. And then right here, remember how we looked at the budget? These are the same categories. So if you have $1,000 in operating expenses, you would put $1,000 in here. And then if you had $5,000 in contract expenses, you would put that in here. And it should do the math for you. Double check it. Forms break, links break. So always double check your math. If you have indirect costs, you should know what they are if you ask for them, and you would put them there. Now, if you do have match, this is where you put your match. So the blue part is where you're asking for your funds. The orange part is where you're asking for match. Match requires the same level of documentation as the request for reimbursement, and you would put it in the same categories. So I'm going to take this back out so that it's not messing with the rest of it. So any program income you may have earned, if someone like paid you for your trees that you cut down, that's where that would go. And then you would have the award balance. So ideally, if you have your previous funds requested, it will subtract this and it will tell you how much you have left at the end. And then any remarks that you want to add in, let us know, good things, bad things, whatever. Your name, your title, your email, so we know how to contact you, and the date this was filled out. Again, save it. And then, re-upload it here, along with all of your documentation that's showing the costs were incurred and paid. And it gives you all these examples of what you do and the types of files that are available. Any more comments you want to add? Great. So remember, this one says that you had match. So your total funds requested today, any match that you're claiming today, is volunteer time a part of your match. If it's yes, you get more questions. If you need if you need to log it in, we have this handy dandy little form for you. If you don't, you can upload your own if you already have it in an Excel or a Word document. Is this the final request for reimbursement? No. You just sign it and move on. If yes, you have one more question. Have all grants been sent? And then you're typing your name in here, and that's essentially saying, as far as I know, this is true. So you can save your draft and come back to it later. and you would come back to it exactly the same way as you found it the first time. Or if it's ready to go, you submit form. Now, if you don't submit, we will never see it. So please make sure you submit form. The other little thing to remember is that the owner of this account is the only one that can submit. You may have a collaborator who's done most of this work for you, but only the owner can submit. So that is, in a nutshell, hopefully not quick, hopefully quickly enough, that how to, what am I doing here, guys? I'm sorry. Yeah. I closed something out and now everything's gone. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Please put any questions that you have about the agreement or about the request for reimbursement forms in the chat, and I will answer them as we go along. And again, always feel free to contact me. I'm sure my email is on there somewhere on all the documentation. So I'm going to throw it back to Jamie now, and thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Your part is super important, so I just wanted to make sure that's the recorded part. Everybody, please go back to her stuff. So I'm just going to jump right back in here, share my screen. Okay. Share. All right, so we're going to, if everybody can see it all right, get into the good implementation part of your project. So now you see all of that yummy, wonderful text that and reporting that you will need to really think about, and how you know, that weaves into everything, into what your project is going to do, into my presentation and Alexis's. So with mine, this is kind of where you get your hands dirty, right? This is the part of the agreement that will help guide you through the actual project management. The parts here, I'm repeating this principal contacts section because that is, like Janice mentioned, really important. Read that and make sure you see who was the program representative, who was named in this area. So each person has a special role, right? So you have a, you know, let's say you have your Parks and Recs person. Well, they'll be knowing what's going on the ground, but are you talking to, say, the clerk who's in charge of the reporting and putting in the information into submittable? Just make sure everybody is talking. So the main thing with behind the scenes and on the ground is that you're just following the flow of your project, that you're following your grant proposal, and that you have the right people and players involved to make a really good team to make sure everything is going well. So project manager for the city needs to be in constant contact with the regional urban forester. And who's that? That is the DNRC technical specialist. So that's a person in this grant agreement named technical specialist. That will be, I'll go to the next slide soon here on who that will be, but just know the sooner the better. Like, have a project design if you haven't already, meeting with this person and set up a routine check-in schedule. Make sure that they can help make sure the project runs smoothly and to help in the implementation. So once the agreement is signed, I'm going to repeat this, I think Janice mentioned it, by both parties of DNRC. So almost all of your agreements are in place right now. There's only a couple that we have a little bit of finalization to work on. But once the agreement is signed by both parties, and yours should be, that I think is on this webinar right now, it's considered active and you can begin work at any time. So use your application's proposal as reference for moving forward with your project. Okay. So like I said, implementation, these are the technical specialists in your area. So make sure it shows my name is program specialist. You can default to contacting me anytime for mostly, you know, grants related questions, or, you know, to direct to the right person if you need to for like Alexis or Janice. But we all are fine with being emailed or contacted, and we can pass you along to the right person for this grants team to assist you. So your technical specialists, look at where your community lies within this map. So just know in the west side, that would be Hannah Payne. And in the east side, that would be Sherry Steckler. So those are your technical specialists for DNRC that are going to be with you from beginning to end of this project. And they're going to know, they're going to be familiar with your project from, you know, the agreement side, DNRC side, to the local side. And if you're having any difficulties, they can be kind of the first ones to help with, you know, providing resources or walking you through any parts that, you know, might hang you up. So that's really important. Want to establish that. They're actually at a training right now, so I was going to have them pop on and say hello, but just know they know this, they're ready to roll, and they're ready to work with you. So additional requirements and appendices in your agreement. If your project involves any kind of tree planting, maintenance and removal, inventory work, planning, there is a special appendix probably attached to your grant agreement. So that's another thing to pay attention to when you flip through all, I don't know what it is, 100 billion pages of your grant agreement. At the end, you'll see the appendices. So you might have specifications for tree planting, pruning, and removal. That would be, you know, the ANSI standards. So those are the rules to follow to make sure that your project, you know, your trees are being installed properly, pruned properly, that you're using qualified professionals. Tree inventory projects have special types of data that base data that we have to collect. So there are procedures for that to follow. And also Hannah Payne is the tree inventory coordinator for that. So she will be the main contact for any tree inventory projects. And then of course, maintenance, establishment plans, anything like that that you did put in your proposal where it says have a 3-year establishment plan, you know, to make sure that you're mulching, training, whatever you need to do to make sure that that tree is going to survive and thrive. We do use that. So just know that's not just like a willy-nilly requirement that we asked for in your proposal. That is something in the agreement now. So that is something that we just want to make sure is on track. Same with your timeline, anything like that. The project inspection at the end. So once your project is complete, once you get things, you know, planted in the ground, yay, contact your technical specialist from the grant agreement. They will schedule a time to come out and hang out with you. And they're just going to do the same thing. They're going to follow and make sure that the specifications were followed. And then they will fill out an inspection form and they'll submit it to grants personnel to us. Yeah, so, and that could involve also a phone interview, asking to send pictures. So this is a required document of your reimbursement request. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on this. Nope, I think that's it. Okay. Finally, just some tracking tips. So I'm going to go back over some of these things. The best way to follow your plan and follow for success is to pull out your grant agreement, have it handy. Maybe to make a copy of those grants contacts in that one page and put that somewhere on your desk, just so you have it for reference of who you need to contact for what. But have everything, use that as your guide, and it'll help you stay on track. Put important dates in your calendar. So those reporting deadlines, pop quiz. Do you remember when the progress reports were due? Well, you guys can't talk right now. So, yeah, January 31st is when they're due, but the deadlines are, you know, the mid-year and end of calendar year. So, those progress reports end June 30th and December 31st. So that's what Janice covered. Find resources like those volunteer logging sheets. If you just want to download an example of one and keep it handy, that's on the UCF Grants webpage, and I'll share the link with that for that in a little bit. Utilize all of us, DNRC team, your local team, other communities that have grants. That's why I asked you to put in your name and what kind of grant you have in the chat, because you're all, you know, in this together, and so we can ask each other, absolutely, get ideas, even tips or anything like that to share with us, so we can keep improving upon our grants administration process. And then always, I'm just going to keep reiterating this throughout the whole thing. Track your expenses as they happen in the now, like, and it helps with less scrambling later. And of course, please take pictures. The Forest Service is asking for that as well. Looking for success stories for how well this grant, how well both IRA and PD grants are going, into our communities. And please go ahead and, be proud of it and toot your horn and all of that. You never know, some of these stories and examples can be taken up to the national level and used as highlights, across the country. So you just never know how they could be used. So here's our team. Each of us submitted our favorite fall tree. And of course, mine is the ginkgo. But these are the people. This is your DNRC team that's going to help you manage your grant. So, for default, you can always contact me. I'm the program specialist. Alexis can help with fiscal and program support. You'll be seeing her name pop up in emails. And like I said, Hannah Payne for the West Side Technical Specialist, Sherry Steckler, East Side Technical Specialist, and then Janice Fontaine for grants and agreement support. All right, so with that, it looks like Alexis is up for reporting and tracking, and I'm going to see if I can stop sharing my screen again. Can I? I don't know. This is difficult for me for some reason. Hold on. I don't know why it won't stop sharing. Ah, there we go.
All right, let's see if I can start sharing. Bear with me one moment. All right, panelists, can you give me a thumbs up if you see the presentation well? Great. All right, good morning. I'm Alexis Armstrong. I'm the program support technician for forestry assistance with the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. Mine's going to be a little repetitious of this stuff, but it's just so we can re-hit on the topics that we really want you to take home from this presentation today. So I will be talking about reporting. Specifically, I'm going over term dates, check-ins, biannual reporting logistics, and final reports, which include the last bits of your reimbursement if you have done partial payment requests, and the program report. So first thing I'd like to go over are the term dates. So you can look at your agreement. It's something good to reference frequent and often for any questions that you might have. This is particularly important to know your start and termination date for when you're submitting like volunteer hours, personnel, what else? Just any general expenses that have taken place relating to this project, because it needs to take place within this time frame of your agreement. Cannot take place outside of it without prior written approval from the program manager, Jamie. Next thing is check-ins. As Jamie has mentioned, check-ins are super important. Just kind of keeps you on track. It keeps us on track so we know where you folks are at with your implementation and if there's any support that we could maybe give. Please utilize us folks at the DNRC. That team slide that Jamie put up near the end of her presentation, those are your go-to folks. I also put in the chat, and I will re-copy and paste it into the chat, some really important URLs and also emails for everyone that's in that team slide that Jamie showed earlier. And then also if you'd like to utilize our website, on the right-hand side of your screen is a screenshot of the DNRC Urban and Community Forestry Regional Service Foresters. And again, there's Hannah and Sherry listed there. And that map is also online too, in case you're wondering which side of the line you fall on. So this is a screenshot of section 2.6 from your agreement. It covers biannual reporting requirement dates, as mentioned by both Janice and Jamie earlier. Super important because it's a little quirky, the reporting periods versus when you need to submit that report. So just keep in mind you can reference that in your agreement as well. So here's a standstill screenshot of some of the stuff that Janice went over in your submittable account. just because it's a little different with some of the terms that we maybe use interchangeably with them. So one thing that's really important is at the top of this screen, you have a little menu bar that lists activities, messages, forms, note, awards, and payments. And you want to pay attention to the forms one in particular, because that's where you will find all of your options for submitting the fiscal reports, program reports, partial payments, etc. And so then after you click on forms, if you scroll down a little bit on your page, look for the request forms section. And then to access both of those, you'll need to click open. So again, when this says request forms, we call them reports, fiscal reports, reimbursement reports, etc. So just keep that in mind, that the wording's just a little bit different. Fortunately, we can't change that because submittable is a separate entity from DNRC. And then one other neat feature I like to highlight is activity, which is again up at that top bar. On here, you can kind of go through and see what's been done thus far in relation to your account with a particular project in case you have multiple grants from DNRC. So per project, you'll have separate like activities, messages, forms, etc. listed per project. So that's something good to keep in mind. And that will show, it's kind of a nice, useful tool to double check that you clicked submit on a report or reimbursement request. So just know that that is also there for you to utilize. But also feel free to reach out me, Jamie, or Kirby, or Jamie, or Janice, if you just want us to go in and double check on the back end as well. And what to expect for reporting. So this is a screenshot from your agreement again. It's more of like a checklist. The actual submission of your reports won't look like this. However, we do have a downloadable worksheet that I'll show you here in just a minute. But it's just kind of something nice. Jamie recommended having your agreement printed off somewhere handy so you can reference it quickly. And this will be in it. So you can just quickly reference like, okay, I need to keep track of this and that, and so forth. So it's just nice to have that hard copy right there. So for the actual worksheet, when you're in submittable and you're in that particular form, as submittable calls it, or report that we call it, you can download this worksheet. So this is a full page, but to be able to display it, I cut it in half. So on this worksheet that you can download, it matches the questions exactly as how they will be when you submit the actual fillable web page on submittable. So keep that in mind that you can't submit this worksheet, you'll still need to fill out that fillable web page on submittable. But this is just kind of handy to work from. So it's all the normal reporting requirements. If this isn't your first time being a successful recipient of one of the Urban and Community Forestry's grant programs. So this will probably look familiar to a lot of you folks. And this is the second page. And so it's pretty simple and straightforward. And then there'll also be a section to download the budget table so you can kind of draft that before you also submit that. And one more thing I'd like to make sure I reiterate about the budget table is make sure to click that button ahead of time in your fillable page in submittable that yes, you require match or no, you don't, because again, you'll have different budget tables that are populated. One will show match, the other one will not. So program development requires match, IRA does not. So now we'll cover specifics about the final program reports and reimbursement requests, or also sometimes referred to as fiscal reports. This is another screenshot from your agreement of section 2.6. They're to be submitted no later than 30 days after your term date. So it kind of follows the performance period reports as well, just 30 days post performance period. This will be 30 days post term date. One thing also, which is pretty neat from this mobile platform, is it can send automatic reminders. So whenever a deadline for a report is approaching, you already get that email reminder. And then traditionally those have come directly from me, and I still might send those out if needed, but know that they will more than likely come from Submittable now. Excuse me. So documentation for reimbursement reports. You can submit reimbursement requests as frequently as monthly, as Janice said. If you want to do quarterly or at the end, that's fine. Some of these grants are larger due to the influx of funds, so we recommend doing it as frequent as monthly if you would like. If you need to reference your budget totals per category, that was in section 2. Janice kind of went over that. It was like the miniature budget table that's found in your agreement. And then again, no match is required for IRA, only for PD grants. And then I stole this from the grants team. Janice, thank you very much. I'll post this on the grants resources webpage for urban and community forestry. This is a great tool for making sure you're meeting the requirements of documentation for showing that a cost was incurred, and samples of documentation for showing that a cost was paid. So if you're wondering, so especially with this part, the purple squares, if you will, the timesheet, time log, report from time tracking program, some sample documentation for that is a little hard to come up with for some of these really small rural communities. You know, people are wearing multiple hats all the time. And so what you would need to show for proof that a cost was paid is sending over a payroll report from the accounting system or a check stub for the employee. So if you'll notice, it goes from top to bottom instead of right to left. So this is, again, just a helpful little tool that will be online also for you to reference. So thanks for hanging in there through breezing through all of those to reiterate some of those pieces we'd like to hit home with you folks. And here's all of our contact info. I will repost those helpful URLs and contact info again in the chat here in just a few moments, but I will turn this over to Jamie, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Alexis. Might have you, I'll go ahead and do the final screen that I've got just for, let's see if I can unshare it though, but yeah. So if there are any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I think we can allow to talk as well if we do like a hand raise. Is that right? Okay. And then just one other thing. Yeah, I really just want to also mention, like, if you feel like anything is going a little bit off or not expected, like if you deviate from the plan at all, there are ways, work with us on that. Things like, oh, my estimate for the trees that we were going to buy, they ended up being cheaper than what I expected. Can I buy more water bags or something like that? And so just send an email in writing. That's kind of the best way to do it, to make sure everything's kind of documented and tracked, because we do have a lot of these running through, and sometimes we're like, oh, which grant was that? What was that? So it's great. Then we just have this flow of information and documentation with emails and whatnot to be like, oh yeah, this project, changed a little bit. Oh, Jamie gave that approval, to make that little project change. And some things might require an amendment. If it has, a significant amount of money changing through different categories. So just, give us a call or email. Email would be great, actually, and then we can make sure we're all like sharing, the question and give you an appropriate answer in a timely manner. So, yeah, with that, again, thank you all so much. Yeah, this webinar, Jen asked if we can share it through email, Alexis, and some people are sharing their email. which is great. So I think we can do that. Just put the link probably on our website and then share the link through email. Does that sound good?
Yep, that's the way it will need to be. I think the file will be so large, so it will be posted online for folks.
Nice. And we do now see, you know, for everybody that registered, thank you, because this is a really important part of, you know, making sure that everyone, you know, gets the, you know, best success out of their grants projects. And we're really looking forward to it and just really happy and excited to see what Montana communities can do. So I'm really proud of everybody. And yeah, I'm not seeing very many questions come in, and that's fine. So we're at 5 till the hour. So any other comments, Alexis or Janice? All right. I think we'll leave everybody to the rest of their day. It's getting sunny out over here again, and it's a beautiful, beautiful day. So thanks so much. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
I'm going to stay on while everyone's logging off slowly just to capture everything in the chat. You're muted.
All right. Sounds great. Can you end the webinar still? I think we're down to 2. Maybe Trevor must have a question or something, I'm not sure. But yay. Yeah.
It looks pretty silent. I'll go ahead and end the webinar.
Okay.
All right, bye.
All right, see ya.